Welcome back to the deep dive. We're doing something a little different today. Usually, we look at one specific trend, like one direction the world is moving in. But today we're looking at a collision.
Yeah, it really is it's a massive collision. Two totally opposing forces just slamming into each other.
Right. And is in the
Yeah.
world of real estate. And honestly, the fallout from this, it's going to change how every single person listening to this views their own home.
It's a study in contrasts. I mean, almost a philosophical battle over who controls information.
Exactly. So on one side, we have this growing, almost desperate obsession with secrecy, the hidden market.
The pocket listings.
Yeah, the pocket listings. The sellers who say, I want to sell my house, but I don't want anyone to know I'm actually selling my house. It's like this velvet rope approach to real estate.
Which, is a fascinating psychological trend just by itself. It's this desire to take a mass market commodity and treat it like it's a rare diamond.
Right. And then on the other side, coming at us like an absolute freight train is what I'm calling the hyper-transparent market.
The digital revolution side of things.
Yeah, we are talking about a technological shift that is stripping the walls off of our houses.
Yeah.
Metaphorically and, well, thanks to LiDAR, kind of literally too.
Literally mapping the inside of your house.
We're seeing a shift toward AI, massive data mandates, and a level of scrutiny that is going to make the real estate market more transparent than it has ever been in human history.
It is the ultimate tension. You have the homeowner's desire for privacy on one end and the financial industry's voracious demand for data on the other. And right in the middle of that tension is the number that basically dictates your net worth.
The value of your home.
Exactly.
So we've got a stack of sources today that are going to pull the curtain back on this whole battle. We are looking at a brand new empirical analysis from Bright MLS.
And this is very fresh data.
Super fresh. We're talking late 2024 and early 2025. It dives into over 100,000 home sales to answer a pretty simple question. Do these secret listings actually work, or is it all just a vanity project?
And spoiler alert on that, the data is pretty damning. I mean, it fundamentally challenges the entire logic of the private market.
It really does. It tears it apart. And then after we get through that, we're going to pivot to a very dense, very forward-looking academic paper. It's titled The Architecture of Trust.
From the ArtSviv preprint server, also 2025.
Right, from ArtSviv. And it breaks down how AI and this new government mandate called UAD 3.6 are about to turn the art of appraisal into a high-stakes data science problem.
We are essentially moving from a world of secrets and handshakes to a world of structured data and algorithms.
Yeah.
And that transition is incredibly messy.
Messy is the perfect word for it. So the mission for this deep dive is to really figure out what's happening. Is the market fracturing into these little private islands, or is it standardizing into one giant database?
And more importantly, are we ready for an AI to decide what our house is worth based on the reflection in our windows?
That is a very specific fear, and as we're going to see, a highly valid one.
Very valid.
Let's get into it. Let's start with the secret menu, because I feel like everyone loves a secret menu. You go to In-N-Out, you order animal style, you feel like an insider.
It confers status. It signals to everyone that you know something they don't.
Exactly. And that is exactly the vibe with office exclusives in real estate, also known as pocket listings or private exclusives. But for the listener who, maybe just browses Zillow for fun or is maybe thinking about buying their first place, we really need to define the terms here. What exactly is an office exclusive from a technical standpoint?
So, to really understand the exclusive, you first have to understand the standard. The engine of American real estate is the multiple listing service.
The MLS.
The MLS. It is a cooperative database. If I'm a listing agent, I put a house on the MLS, and I am contractually offering to pay a commission to any other agent who brings a buyer.
It's the public square. It feeds everything. Zillow, Redfin, Realtor.com, Foxionly, the entire ecosystem relies on it.
Correct. It's radical transparency. Now, an office exclusive is when the seller signs a listing agreement but explicitly instructs the broker not to put it on the MLS.
Keep this between us.
Right. Keep it quiet. The broker can market it, but only effectively offline or within their own private network. So they can share it with agents at their own specific brokerage firm. They can email their personal client list. But it goes completely dark on the public internet. If you search for the address on Google, you get absolutely nothing.
Now, the pitch here to the seller is usually exclusivity, right? It's, hey, we'll test the market, We'll keep it private. You won't have any looky-loos walking through your master bedroom. No open houses with total strangers tracking mud on the carpet.
That is the standard pitch. Privacy, security, or this idea of testing a price before going public. And historically, this was a very niche thing.
Like celebrities.
Exactly. Celebrities, high-profile politicians, or maybe a very high-end luxury estate where you genuinely do not want photos of your Picasso collection on the internet for thieves to study.
Which totally makes sense. If I'm a senator, I probably don't want floor plans of my house available to the general public.
Exactly.
But the data from Bright MLS shows something shifted recently. This isn't just senators and movie stars anymore.
It's not. Historically, these pocket listings were maybe 2 to 4% of the market, a very small slice. But looking at the empirical data from late 2024 and early 2025, that number jumped to nearly 8% of new listings in the Bright MLS coverage area.
That is a doubling. That's a massive surge in a really short amount of time.
It is. And the report highlights that some brokerages are now using this as a core business model. It is not just a tactic for a specific sensitive client anymore. It is a baseline strategy. And we really have to be honest about the incentives at play here. Why would a brokerage actively push this?
Follow the money.
Exactly. Follow the money. In a standard MLS deal, the listing broker splits the commission with the buyer's broker, usually 50-50. But if I keep it an office exclusive and I find the buyer within my own office, or better yet, I find the buyer myself, my brokerage keeps 100% of that commission.
Ah, the double-end deal. So the pitch to the seller is privacy, but the underlying incentive for the broker is pure profit.
It's a classic agency problem. The incentives of the agent and the client aren't perfectly aligned, but sellers buy into it because they really believe in the velvet rope theory. They think if you make a property hard to get, people will somehow want it more and pay more for it.
But here is the million-dollar question, or I guess the median home price question, depending on your market. Does it actually work for the seller? If I hide my house from the open market, do I actually get a better result?
This is where the Bright MLS study is absolutely devastating.
It really is.
They looked at over 100,000 sales. And they didn't just look at simple averages, which can be misleading. They ran deep regression analyses to control for location, bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage. They compared apples to apples. And the answer is a resounding no.
Walk us through those numbers. Let's start with speed. Because the pitch from the agent is often, hey, we have a list of VIP buyers ready to go right now.
Right. And in a hot real estate market, speed is currency. For a standard MLS listing one that went live to the public immediately on day one, the median time to contract was 20 days.
Okay, so roughly 3 weeks.
Right. For office exclusives, 37 days.
Oof. That is nearly double.
It's almost 3 weeks longer. You are sitting there, keeping your house pristine, waiting for this exclusive network to bite, while the rest of the actual market is moving on without you. And in real estate, time is rarely your friend. The longer a listing sits, the more people assume something is fundamentally wrong with it.
Okay, but I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a second. Let's say I'm a seller who doesn't care about speed. I'm wealthy, I'm not in a rush, I have plenty of time. I'm totally willing to wait 37 days, or even 50 days if it means I find that one unicorn buyer who pays a massive premium because they feel special, getting access to secret inventory. Does the data show any kind of privacy premium?
It shows the exact opposite. Or rather, it shows a void. The analysis showed zero price advantage.
Zero.
Zero. Now, it's true that high-end homes are often chosen for this strategy. The data says 20% of office exclusives are properties over $1 million.
Right, makes sense.
But when you control for the property characteristics, when you compare that $1 million exclusive to a similar $1 million public listing, the exclusives did not sell for a penny more than the homes that went straight to the MLS as active or coming soon.
So let me just get this completely straight. I'm listing my house. I choose the secret menu option. I actively limit my buyer pool to a tiny fraction of the total market. I wait almost twice as long to sell it, and I make the exact same amount of money.
Potentially less, actually. You have to factor in the holding costs: mortgage, taxes, insurance, utilities, maintenance. For those extra 17 days, you are literally losing money out of pocket. You are essentially paying for the privilege of limiting your own market exposure.
That feels like a scam.
Yeah.
Or at the very least, a very, very effective marketing trick by the brokerages that absolutely does not deliver for the client.
It is certainly a strategy that benefits the intermediary far more than the principal. And there's another layer to this failure that I found completely fascinating in the data. The report calls it the bait-and-switch reality.
Oh, I loved this part of the report because it confirms everything I always suspected about these exclusive games.
The study found that nearly 90% of these office exclusives eventually end up on the public MLS anyway.
Wait, 90%?
9 out of 10. They try the secret route, they wait around, it fails to produce that unicorn buyer, and then they crawl back to the public market. They transition the listing to coming soon or active before they actually sell.
So for the vast majority of sellers, the exclusive period wasn't an alternative sales channel at all. It was just a delay tactic. It was basically pre-marketing purgatory.
Exactly. It's a waiting room. You sit there for a month. You realize the secret buyers aren't actually coming, and then you just do what you should have done on day one. You list it where everyone can see it.
That is brutal. It really undermines that whole savvy strategy narrative that agents sell. But look, it's not just about the individual seller losing time and money, right? There's a much bigger impact on the overall market when you lock up inventory like this.
That is the social cost. Real estate markets rely on two things above all else: liquidity and information. When you pull inventory into the dark, you actively hurt buyers. You fracture the marketplace. And the report points out some specific zip codes where this behavior is just rampant.
Yeah, I saw some of these numbers in the source material. In the D.C. metro area, so we're talking places like Cleveland Park, McLean, Chevy Chase office exclusives, were accounting for over 24% of all new listings.
Just think about that for a second. 1 in 4 houses in those specific, highly desirable neighborhoods effectively did not exist for the average buyer.
That is huge.
Yeah.
If I'm a young couple trying to buy into Cleveland Park, and I'm diligently checking Zillow every morning, I am only seeing 75% of the actual market. The rest is locked behind a velvet rope.
And it forces you as a buyer to play games. It forces you to try and figure out which specific brokerage has the secret inventory. You literally have to sign up with a specific agent just to see what is actually for sale in a neighborhood. It really echoes the pre-MLS era, like back in the 1970s and 80s, where who you knew mattered way more than what you could actually pay.
It's a massive step backward for transparency. It entirely favors the insiders.
It creates a fragmented, inefficient market. And efficiency is what keeps prices fair and stable. When you fragment the data, you get distortion.
Which is incredibly ironic, isn't it? Because while this hidden market is actively trying to pull us back to the 1980s, the hyper-transparent market, this digital revolution we're seeing, is trying to launch us into the 2030s.
That is the perfect pivot, because while some sellers are desperately trying to hide data, the mortgage industry and the appraisal industry are gearing up to demand more data than ever before. They are completely done with secrets.
So let's move to our second main topic from the outline, the appraisal crisis and the coming of UAD 3.6. Now, I have to say, UAD 3.6 sounds like a droid from Star Wars, like maybe R2-D2's really boring accountant cousin.
It really does.
But it's actually a mandate that's going to change everything about how we value homes.
It is. But to understand why we need a massive, sweeping mandate like this, we first have to look at the complete mess we're in right now. The academic paper we referenced, the architecture of trust, it calls it a demographic crisis, and a variability crisis in the appraisal industry.
Okay, so the demographic part is pretty simple to understand. The average appraiser right now is over 50 years old, and there just aren't enough young people entering the field to replace them. It's essentially a dying trade. But the variability part, you have to tell me about the 100 square feet scandal.
This was a study I cited in the paper that perfectly highlights the human problem in real estate. They looked at properties that had been appraised multiple times by different human appraisers. Now, you would think measuring a house is a purely objective task, right? A wall is a wall. Physics doesn't change based on who is holding the tape measure.
Right. A tape measure doesn't lie.
The tape measure might not lie, but the human using it makes mistakes. In 25% of cases, different appraisers disagreed on the total square footage of the exact same house by more than 100 square feet.
100 square feet, that's not a rounding error. That is an entire bedroom. That's a nursery or a dedicated home office.
Imagine the value difference there. In a high-cost market like San Francisco or New York, where real estate is trading at, what, $1,000 or $1,500 a square foot?
That is $100,000 or $150,000 in value. Just vanished into thin air. Or magically appeared out of nowhere, depending on the error.
Precisely. Depending entirely on which specific human appraiser happens to show up that day, your house is either a mansion or a cottage. That level of variability is an unacceptable risk for a bank that is lending out millions of dollars.
And it gets worse than just bad measuring. The paper discusses this concept of confirmation bias in appraisals.
Yes, and this is the open secret of the entire industry. Appraisers almost always receive the finalized sales contract before they actually do the appraisal, so they see the exact price the buyer and seller have already agreed on.
So they look at it and say, okay, they agreed on 500,000. Let's see if I can do some math to justify 500,000.
Exactly. And statistically speaking, appraisals land at the exact contract price way, way more often than random chance would ever dictate. They aren't truly independently valuing the house from scratch. They're just confirming the deal so the loan goes through.
So they're essentially just rubber stamping the contract.
Effectively, yes. And this leads directly to appraisal inflation. It builds hidden risk into the whole macroeconomic financial system because the collateral, the physical house backing the loan, might not actually be worth what the paper says it's worth.
Enter UAD 3.6. This is the fix, right? What exactly is it beyond the droid name?
It stands for the Uniform Appraisal Dataset version 3.6. It is a strict mandate from the GSE, so Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, that requires full implementation by 2026. And it represents a fundamental foundational shift from narrative reports to structured data.
Break that down for us. What is the practical difference there?
Right now, an appraisal is largely just a PDF document. It's a digital form, sure, but a lot of it is just free text and manually checked boxes. A human being has to physically read it to understand the nuances. UAD 3.6 changes the underlying language of the report to XML. It becomes machine-readable code, and it makes the forms highly dynamic.
Dynamic in what way?
Well, the old forms were static. You had a predefined box for basement, whether the house actually had one or not. It was a rigid template. UAD 3.6 is more like a smart branching survey. If you check the box for accessory dwelling unit, the form instantly expands. It spawns an entirely new set of fields asking very specific questions about that unit's foundation, the utility metering, the rental history.
So it adapts to the actual property being appraised. It forces the appraiser to give detail where detail is genuinely needed, instead of just skipping over it.
Exactly. And most importantly, it kills the vague adjectives. No more describing a property's condition as average plus or charming for its age.
Because charming usually just means needs a ton of work.
Usually, yes. But charming isn't a data point. UAD 3.6 uses strictly standardized codes. You have condition ratings spanning C1 through C6, quality ratings spanning Q1 through Q6.
Okay, so like C1 is a brand new, perfect house.
Right. C1 is new construction. C6 is substantial structural damage. But the broader point is, a C3 rating means the exact same thing in Florida as it does in Alaska. It creates a universal standardized language for housing quality. It turns the physical house into a structured data set that a computer can instantly compare against millions of other data sets.
And once you have that structured data, you crack the door wide open for AI. You don't need a human underwriter to read the PDF anymore. The machine just ingests the XML code directly.
Exactly. And this brings us right to the AI tech stack that the academic paper outlines. This is where we move from just fixing the paperwork to literally replacing human senses.
This is where it gets crazy. Let's walk through these layers. Layer 1 is what the paper calls the eyes, physical data acquisition. We are finally moving away from the tape measure to lasers.
We are moving from level 1, which is manual measurement, straight past level 2 digital apps like Cubicasa, to level 3, real-time LiDAR.
And this is the actual stuff in the newer iPhones and iPads, right? The little black circle next to the camera.
Yes. The Pro models have a LiDAR scanner built right in. It stands for light detection and ranging. You walk into a room, you wave your phone around, and it is shooting out thousands of invisible laser pulses every single second to measure physical depth. It builds a millimeter-accurate 3D floor plan instantly, in real time.
So no more guessing. No more, is that a 10-foot wall or an 11-foot wall?
It's incredibly precise. But the paper mentions a critical new concept here that we have to consider: digital provenance. Because if we are trusting a digital scan from a phone instead of a licensed human inspector, how do we absolutely know the scan is real?
Right. Because if I'm selling my house and I have a massive structural crack in the drywall, what exactly stops me from scanning the room and then just jumping into Photoshop to smooth it out before I upload it?
Deep faking your own house.
Exactly. We deep fake everything else. Why not the living room?
That is precisely where digital provenance comes in. The paper discusses using cryptographic signatures. It's basically a permanent chain of custody for the digital data. The file itself proves that it was created at this specific GPS location, at this exact timestamp, on this specific device sensor, and critically, that it hasn't been altered by a single byte since it was captured.
So if I try to edit a single pixel to hide that crack, The cryptographic seal just breaks.
The seal breaks, and the bank immediately rejects the appraisal. It ensures the physical data is authentic.
That is incredibly high-tech. So we have the eyes now. Now we need the brain to process what the eyes are seeing. Layer 2 is semantic understanding. And this is where the paper got really trippy with a concept called Gaussian splatting.
It is a great term, 3D Gaussian splatting, or 3D GS for short.
It sounds like a really messy painting technique, like Jackson Pollock in a digital studio.
It kind of is, but in 3 dimensions. See, older 3D tech, like NeurFs, which stands for neural radiance fields, they were great at making really pretty pictures, but they were incredibly slow to train and render. 3DGS approaches it differently. It represents an entire scene as millions of microscopic 3D blobs, or Gaussians.
Just blobs.
Blobs. Each individual blob has a coordinate position, a color value, and a level of transparency. And because it's mathematically simpler, it trains in minutes and renders at 30 frames per second. It allows you to literally fly through the virtual house on your screen smoothly.
But the paper mentioned a specific problem with this. The cotton ball problem.
Yes. And this is the main limitation of the blob approach when it comes to real estate. 3DGS is fantastic for organic things. Trees, flowers in the yard, a messy bedspread, things that are naturally soft and textured. But houses. Houses are made of hard lines, flat drywall, sharp 90-degree corners.
And blobs don't do sharp corners very well, I assume.
Exactly. If you try to represent a perfectly flat wall with millions of tiny round blobs, you inevitably get this cloudiness or a fuzzy edge. The rendering makes it look like the wall is physically made of cotton balls.
And if I'm an appraiser or an AI acting as an appraiser trying to judge the exact quality of the drywall finish or the crown molding, that fuzziness is a total disaster. I literally can't tell if it's bad workmanship by the contractor or just the cotton ball effect from the AI.
Right. It obscures the exact level of detail needed for a high-level standardized valuation.
Yeah.
And then there is the transparency depth dilemma.
Now that sounds highly philosophical.
It sounds like it, but it's actually a very practical geometric problem. AI completely struggles with windows. If the camera looks at a window, the AI gets incredibly confused. It thinks, am I looking through the glass at the oak tree in the front yard, or am I looking at the reflection of the kitchen island on the glass?
To a human brain, that distinction is instantly obvious. We understand reflection natively.
But to an AI, it's totally ambiguous. So it often creates these really weird ghost artifacts in the 3D model. It might accidentally render the oak tree inside the kitchen, or it just creates a bizarre hole in the wall where the window is supposed to be.
So while the tech is amazing, it still has these weird visual hallucinations that human eyes just don't have. It's literally seeing ghosts.
It is. But when it works properly, it does something that humans actually struggle to quantify at scale: open vocabulary recognition. This part completely blew my mind.
This is the shift from just seeing basic shapes to actually understanding complex concepts, right?
Exactly. Old AI models were trained to spot very specific predefined objects: kitchen, bedroom, chair, table. If it saw something that wasn't on its rigid list, it just failed or ignored it.
So if it saw a bidet in the bathroom, and it didn't have bidet on its list, it might just classify it as a weird water fountain.
Which would be a very bad classification for an appraisal. But new AI, using advanced models like CLAP or SAM2, they understand natural language natively. It doesn't just see a generic fridge. It can identify a sub-zero refrigerator with French doors. It can look at a floor scan and tell the exact difference between luxury engineered hardwood with a hand-scraped texture and a cheap standard laminate.
And that is the difference between a $500,000 house and a $550,000 house right there. The finishes.
Precisely. It can accurately distinguish quality at a granular level, and that is the absolute holy grail for automated valuation.
Yeah.
It's not just counting how many bedrooms there are, it's valuing the finish of those bedrooms. It's knowing that this specific marble counter is worth significantly more than that laminate one.
Okay, so the AI system has eyes with LiDAR. It has a brain with semantic understanding. Now let's go to layer 3 from the paper, the cognitive layer, the AI appraiser.
This is where we talk about agentic AI.
Agentic, meaning it has agency, it can actually act on its own.
Yes. Most people right now think of AI as a chatbot. You ask a question, it gives an answer. It's purely passive. An agentic AI can actually plan. It says, okay, my overarching goal is to value this specific house. I need to formulate a multi-step plan.
Like it writes its own to-do list.
Exactly. It thinks, step 1, I need to check the county public tax records. Step 2, I need to search the local MLS for comparable recent sales. Step 3, I need to compare the local zoning laws against the current footprint. And crucially, it knows how to use external digital tools to execute those specific steps without human prompting.
But what happens when things don't add up? Because real estate is messy.
And this is the key differentiator of an agentic system. Say the tax record clearly says the house has 3 bedrooms, but the LiDAR scan from the phone identifies 4 distinct bedrooms. A simple, older script would just crash, or maybe just pick one number at random and move on. An agentic AI flags the conflict. It pauses and says, discrepancy detected here. I need to investigate further. Is there a recent city permit for an addition? Let me check the database. If I don't see a permit, I need to actively flag this file for human review.
It actually knows what it doesn't know.
Which is incredibly critical for systemic safety. And to make these contextual decisions, it relies on what are called knowledge graphs. This directly connects back to that tacit knowledge problem we touched on in the outline.
The stuff that isn't written down in any manual, the local flavor.
Exactly. An experienced human appraiser natively knows that a swimming pool in Phoenix adds significant value to a home. It's blisteringly hot, buyers absolutely expect it, but that exact same pool in Seattle.
It's a total liability. It rains all the time. It fills with wet leaves. It's a huge maintenance nightmare for the buyer.
Right. It might actually subtract value from the home. An AI trained just on a massive national data set might average those two extremes out to 0 value everywhere. A knowledge graph mathematically encodes that local heuristic. It tells the AI, if the property is in Phoenix, then pool equals good. If the property is in Seattle, then pool equals bad.
It's digitizing the gut feeling of the old school neighborhood appraiser.
Or rather, it's digitizing the highly specific local context that informs that gut feeling in the first place. It allows the AI to be hyper-local everywhere at once.
But here is where we run into a massive trust issue. The paper talks extensively about glass box versus black box models. And this is a really big deal for the federal regulators.
Huge deal. The CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, has been very, very clear on this issue. There is absolutely no black box exemption for fair lending laws.
You can't just look at a borrower and say, hey, the computer denied your loan, and honestly, we have no idea why.
Exactly. Deep neural networks, which are the most powerful AI models we currently have, are often complete black boxes. Information goes in one side, highly complex mathematical magic happens in the hidden layers, and an answer comes out the other side. We don't actually know exactly how it weighted the individual variables.
Which is a legal nightmare waiting to happen. If a bank gets sued for discrimination, you simply can't defend the algorithm in court if you don't even know how it works.
So the entire industry is being forced to move toward glass box models, things like generalized additive models or GAMs.
We really need a metaphor here to make this clear. In our pre-show notes, you used the smoothie versus fruit salad analogy, which I absolutely loved.
It really is the best way to visualize the math. A black box model is a smoothie. You put in fruit, ice, yogurt, some spinach, you blend it all up on high, you get a final result, a single value. Now you can taste the strawberry in there, but you physically cannot separate it back out. You can't say exactly 15% of this flavor is from the spinach. It is all inextricably mashed together.
And if the smoothie tastes really bad, you don't actually know which specific ingredient spoiled it.
Exactly. You just know the output is wrong. A glass box model, on the other hand, is a fruit salad. You can clearly see the strawberry, you can see the melon, you can pick out the grape. In a glass box valuation model, the underlying math is completely visible. It says, base price is $400,000 plus $15,000 for the extra bathroom minus $5,000 for the age of the roof.
It's purely additive. You just stack the numbers.
It creates inherent interpretability.
So if a federal regulator knocks on your door and asks, why exactly is this house worth less than the one across the street, you can point to the specific mathematically isolated line item.
Exactly. You can say, because of the roof age, not because the neural net told us so. It actively builds trust because you can audit the logic step by step, not just blindly accept the final result.
That feels a lot safer. It feels much more human readable. But even assuming we get glass boxes working perfectly, Section 5 of our outline warns about the risks of the machine age. And honestly, reading through these, some of these are terrifying scenarios.
They really are. The first one the paper highlights is the empirical collapse of uncertainty.
That sounds like the title of a sci-fi novel.
It really does. It refers to how these statistical models deal with error. In theory, in data science, there are 2 distinct types of uncertainty. You have aleatoric uncertainty, which is just random noise, the inherent chaos of the real world that you can't predict. And you have epistemic uncertainty, which essentially just means I don't have enough data yet.
So it's the difference between I don't know versus it's truly random.
But the paper argues that in practical application, these two types of uncertainty correlate 99% of the time. The AI can't easily tell them apart. It might be highly confident about a completely wrong answer. So the proposed fix is to stop philosophizing about the nature of uncertainty and just give stakeholders actionable confidence intervals.
Like, don't just give me a single magic number. Give me a realistic range.
Exactly. Don't say, this house is worth exactly $500,000. Say, this house is worth $500,000 plus or minus $20,000. And if that range is too wide for the bank to accept, the AI should be smart enough to say, hey, human user, go back and take more detailed photos of the kitchen. If I can clearly see the brands on the appliances, I can shrink that uncertainty range by 20%.
That's that agentic behavior kicking in again. Actively asking for human help to close the data gap.
Precisely. But the much darker risk they discuss is algorithmic bias, the redlining ghost.
Right, because we know that historical real estate training data is built on decades of overtly racist housing policies. Redlining, enforced segregation, all of it is baked into the historical sales numbers.
It is. If you train an AI blindly on historical prices, it simply learns historical prejudices. It learns that this specific minority neighborhood is quote-unquote worth less. It doesn't know why. It doesn't read history books about racist zoning laws. It just sees the mathematical pattern in the data and perfectly replicates it.
It reinforces the historical bias under the guise of objective math.
Exactly. It launders the bias. So how do you actually fix that mathematically? The paper details a process called adversarial debiasing.
This sounded exactly like a video game mechanic to me.
It is a brilliant, brilliant concept. You basically pit two different AI models against each other in a closed loop. You have the primary valuation model, which is just trying to guess the correct price of the house based on the features, and you have an adversary model.
The bad guy in the system.
Right. The adversary's only job is to look at the valuation model's final output, just the dollar amount, and try to correctly guess the racial demographic of the neighborhood based purely on that price.
Oh, that is so interesting. So if the adversary can look at the price and say, oh, this is definitely a minority neighborhood, it means the price itself is tainted.
Exactly. It proves that the valuation model is leaking bias. It means the model is subtly using race as a hidden proxy for value. So the system punishes the valuation model. It forces it to throw out that math, retrain itself, and try again over and over until the adversary completely fails to guess the race better than random chance.
You literally force the math to be colorblind by mathematically proving that the final price does not correlate with the local demographic.
It's a highly rigorous mathematical way to enforce societal fairness. You aggressively strip the racial signal entirely out of the valuation signal.
That is absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
And a really clever use of AI to fix an AI problem. But then there is the macro-systemic risk they talked about, the herding crash.
This is the one that genuinely keeps macroeconomists awake at night. Imagine a near future where every single major bank is using the exact same underlying AI model, or even just models that all think the exact same way because they're all trained on the exact same UAD 3.6 structured data set.
We completely lose diversity of opinion in the market.
Right. In a human-driven market, some people are naturally optimistic, some are inherently pessimistic, some appraisers are highly conservative, some are a bit more generous. It generally balances out over millions of transactions. It's a healthy ecosystem. But if the AI unilaterally sets the values...
And then the homes subsequently sell at those exact AI-dictated values.
And then the AI scoops up those new sales and retrains itself on them.
It's a massive, self-fulfilling feedback loop.
It's a closed echo chamber. If the core model has a bug and is slightly too optimistic across the board, it pushes all national prices up. The next cycle of retraining locks that artificial gain in and pushes them even higher. You get a perfectly synchronized algorithmic bubble. Or, much worse, a synchronized crash.
The paper explicitly compared it to the 2010 flash crash in the stock market.
Exactly. In algorithmic high-frequency trading, bots just sold and sold and sold because of an unexpected code interaction, wiping out $1 trillion in minutes. Imagine that happening in the housing market, an algorithmic markdown. Overnight, property values in an entire zip code suddenly drop 10%. Just because of a back-end code update or a subtle data glitch.
And because every single lender is using the exact same standardized system, nobody steps in to buy the dip. The entire market just completely freezes.
It removes the crucial ecological diversity that historically stabilizes markets. We are basically putting all of our systemic eggs in one very smart, very fast, but highly brittle basket.
So bringing this all together, it really feels like we are standing at a major crossroads right now. We started today looking at the secret menu individual sellers desperately trying to hide from the open market to gain some sort of perceived edge. And the Bright MLS data conclusively shows that simply does not work.
It creates unnecessary friction, it slows your sale down by weeks, and it demonstrably doesn't get you a better price. You cannot beat the market by hiding from it.
And on the other hand, we have the incoming machine age. UAD 3.6, LiDAR scanning, agentic AI, all of these forces demanding and forcing radical transparency, turning the physical home into a naked, structured data set.
We are rapidly moving from a market of guarded secrets to a market of structured data. The inherent inefficiency of the pocket listing is just being completely bulldozed by the relentless efficiency of the algorithm.
So what is the future role of the human being in all of this? Is the traditional appraiser just totally extinct in 5 years?
Not extinct, but they have to evolve. The paper argues they will stop being data gatherers. No more driving around with tape measures and clipboards. They transition into being data validators and orchestrators.
They become the pilot checking the automated instruments.
Right. When the agentic AI flags a complex conflict like the tax record says 3 beds, but the 3D scan clearly shows 4 beds, the human professional steps in to resolve the ground truth. They handle the weird edge cases. They handle the why behind the data.
It sounds like the pure art of appraisal is basically gone, but the human judgment part is going to be more important than ever.
I would agree with that completely. We are going to need highly trained humans to manage the machine, not to manually do the machine's job.
Well, here is my final thought for you, the listener. And it's a bit provocative, considering everything we've talked about. We are building this massive architecture of trust with these glass box models so we can clearly see the math. We're building a fairer, much faster, completely unbiased system. But are we genuinely comfortable with the ultimate trade-off here?
The privacy trade-off.
Exactly. The sellers we talked about in Section 1, they wanted privacy. They wanted to hide behind the velvet rope. UAD 3.6 and LiDAR scans, they demand that we completely surrender every single inch of our private homes to the digital twin. Every tiny crack in the drywall, every scratch on the hardwood floor, every layout quirk, it's all uploaded, it's coded, and it's analyzed by a server.
We gain a perfectly efficient market, but we lose the sanctity of the closed door.
We are literally turning our private sanctuaries into open spreadsheets.
That is the ultimate price of the hyper-transparent market.
Just something to think about the next time you casually scan your living room with your phone to see if a new couch is going to fit. You're feeding the machine.
Always. You're always feeding it.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll catch you on the next one.
See you then.